this works.
It did.
It did before. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Milton Town Board meeting, starting with the pledge by Councilman Isakson.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ryan. Is that you?
Yes.
I don't know how to do that. I'm recording. Let's see.
Why is it recording?
Just a second. I don't know how to do that. Oh, allow to record. There you go, Brenda. Or Amanda. Should be set. Yes? Okay. All right. Brenda, can you call the roll, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Present.
Councilwoman Kirk.
Present.
Councilman Froelich.
Present.
Councilman Isakson.
present via Zoom.
Supervisor Zalatik.
Present. Okay, first up is a presentation by EDP for the Cesar Brothers, PDD at 272 Stone Church Road.
Before we start, I've got to make an announcement. I have to recuse myself from this. Cesar Brothers are like family to me, and so I'm going to stay completely out of this decision. Okay.
Joe, I think your microphone needs to be turned on.
Yes.
How's that?
A little better.
How's that?
Try that.
Check 2.
It was working.
It worked like 5 minutes ago. There we go.
Hello?
You can take your mask off.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. I'm Joe Danable. I'm with the Environmental Design Partnership here on behalf of the Cesar Brothers Holding Company and their application for a mixed residential land development district located on property on Stone Church Road. We're here tonight for an introductory presentation to the board and ask that the board refer this to the planning board for recommendations. The project itself, we are proposing a 100-unit mixed single-family subdivision. Mixed being that we have townhouses, single families, and estate lots, 3 different unit types. Brief overview of the property. We have an 83-acre parcel on both the east and west side of Stone Quarry. We're on Stone Church Road. I'm in the wrong town. We're on Stone Church Road. 26 acres on the east side, adjacent to the Saratoga County Airport, and 57 acres on the west side, adjacent to the Eagles Nest subdivision, and a bunch of undeveloped land to the west and to the north. Property is zoned R1. Within the R1 zoning, single-family residential uses are a permitted use on 1/2 acre lots. We looked at the property, we looked at some of the wetlands and other constraints such as the runway protection zone on the property. And that leaves about 67 of the 83 acres as developable land. Just looking at that from a mathematical computation, you take the 67 acres divided by the 1/2 acre lots, there's a base residential density of around 135 units. Looking at the layouts for this property, it's unrealistic that we would ever obtain 135 units in a zoning compliant single-family residential use. We did do a few layouts, however, and a density for a zoning compliant residential use could yield anywhere from about 80 to 120 lots that are all zoning compliant. Level of wetland permitting varies from one level to the other, from basically no disturbance down around the 80 units to a substantial Army Corps and DEC permit for the 120 units. Coming to what we are now proposing, I think there's an opportunity here to significantly reduce the infrastructure on the property, consolidate these units into what would be a cluster development, preserve a significant portion, more than half of the available property as forever wild open space, either owned and maintained by an HOA or by private entities. And what we're looking at is developing a 100 unit subdivision. 92 of those lots would be townhouse style units, attached, single family attached dwelling units, if you will. 6 of these lots would be basically a standard single family lot, and then there would be 2 estate lots further to the west of the site. The layout of this property certainly took into account the existing adjacent properties. As we look at these properties, to the south, the Eagles Nest subdivision to the south is lined with residential properties all along the common property line to the north, with the Caesar brothers holding the property. In a conventional layout, this may yield, or this may represent 10 or 12 proposed single-family dwellings immediately adjacent to the rear yard of the half dozen units that are located within this community. And again, up on the northern community going into Acton Drive, there's a dozen or so lots here. If we were going and looking at a conventional single-family development, we would have, again, about a half dozen or a dozen lots immediately adjacent to there. What we are proposing to do and taking that into account is we pulled away as many units as possible on this side to keep a green space buffer between these units and the proposed single-family units here, townhouse units, and substantially more on the south side of the road. No units are proposed on the west side of the property. The only units, there's 3 units that would be adjacent to 3 of the existing 8 units on that side of the property. So again, that was intentionally done to minimize potential impacts to existing property owners within that community. We've also, again, looked at a cluster development. We know there is some potential water issues in this area and with some of the adjacent neighborhoods. By going to a cluster design, we've essentially reduced the overall impervious area on the property for essentially the roads by about 50%. What that does is it significantly reduces stormwater runoff, significantly reduces the need for stormwater infrastructure, and is preserving, again, as I talked about, 82 acres, 67 developable. We're preserving in this plan 55 acres of land that would be forever wild, deed restricted to never be developed further in the future. Again, preserving a significant amount of open space on the western portion and the eastern portions of the property. I've been talking about the concept layouts, zoning compliant layouts. Again, this is 120 units looking at significant wetland impacts. But as you can see in this layout, there's close to 20 compliant lots immediately adjacent to an existing subdivision. Up here, we have 4 or 5 lots immediately adjacent to an existing subdivision. Significant road length associated with those plans as well. We look at a more, again, a conventional layout that has more of a respect for the wetlands and significantly lower impacts. Still a substantially amount more road, significant impacts to the vegetation, very little open space, very little protected area. To take all that into account, we've now taken, clustered, and significantly reduced the impacts associated with this community by going with this type of design. Not only is it a clustered community, but it also provides an opportunity to have a different type of housing unit within the town of Milton. Currently in the town of Milton, there's very little of a single-family attached units available. These units tend to be a little less expensive than your standard single-family homes, but they're also owner-occupied, which gives those owners a vested interest in their properties, and they maintain them to a high standard. We are proposing to put in a private trail system for the HOA. We also are proposing to put a dog park of sort within the community. Again, this is very early on in the planning stages. We're here tonight for, again, an introductory presentation. We'd like the opportunity to present this to the board to develop these ideas a little more. And I'm hoping that that is what this board deems appropriate and finds fit tonight. Last thing, we are connecting to the Rollins Hollow water supply system, which now is a line that comes down from this property, and we would be extending the Heritage Spring Sewer Works lines that would come up from the south on Stone Church Road. So if there's any questions that I can address tonight that this board may have, I'd certainly like to try, and again, hopefully we can get a referral to the planning board. Thank you.
I have a couple. Go ahead. All right. This project that you presented tonight is just a tad larger than what we discussed at a previous meeting, if I'm correct, right?
This is smaller. When we sat down, there was 120 units that we had on there. We did reduce this down to 100.
Okay. And the upper left, well, that would be the northwest corner of the property there, where you have the not the roundabout, the cul-de-sac.
Yes.
That's just over our limit for homes on the cul-de-sac, is it not?
It's over the town code, however, it is under or at the International Fire Code requirements. Again, as a PDD, that is something that can be worked into the legislation to create legislation for this property itself. And again, being that we meet International Fire Code, that is something that we'd be looking for the board's consideration of.
And John, do you have anything?
Yeah, a few things. Without you delineating wetlands, which are a considerable amount of, there's probably some disagreement as far as conventional housing in here and how many lots you can get, because that is a very wet piece of land. I'm concerned with your upper right-hand corner, your runoff pond area, in the upper right-hand corner, stormwater management area. That, to me, when I look at it, is a wet area, wetland area.
So we can talk about the wetlands. We have had wetland scientists on the property.
Microphone, sorry.
Sorry about that. Try to speak loud. We have had wetland scientists on the property on the 82 acres. There are approximately There's approximately 12 acres of the site that would be deemed as wetland. The darker area here is identified as wetland. No wetlands were found or identified on this side of the property.
Okay.
Very low, I would say low groundwater. We dug some test pits, couldn't find any groundwater on the east side of the road. Groundwater does come into play on the west side of the road.
Well, it's surprising to me, Joe, because if you look at the Pheasant Run development, that's down on that end of that development, it's very down.
Down in here.
No, Pheasant Run is on the,
This is Pheasant Run here.
another question, these are essentially duplexes, I assume, when I looked at it.
Duplex or townhouse or single-family attached.
Well, there's 2 units per building.
Correct.
What do you do for off-site parking?
So each unit will have a 2-car garage and a driveway that'll be about 40 feet in length, which could house an additional 6 cars. So essentially, each house has the ability to park 6 vehicles on site in their driveways and then within their garages. And if you go for each townhouse, you can actually fit 12 vehicles within each two.
Are these roadways going to be town roadways?
We are proposing to dedicate them to the town.
Because I can tell you that cul-de-sac will never fly with the town highway. They like elongated cul-de-sacs to maintain them. That tight round cul-de-sac that you've got in there will never fly.
That is something, we have had some initial conversations. The highway department has voiced some concerns. Certainly parking on the street was something that they were concerned with. I think there's another townhouse community within the area that is a much significantly higher density, and I think there's 4 and 6 unit buildings, not just 2 unit buildings. So I think this is a completely different animal, and certainly trying to compare the two is somewhat apples and oranges.
Yes and no. When I look at the layout of the streets and the other unit development that you're talking about, and I look at traffic-wise and how it actually works, it doesn't. I can voice that from driving a fire truck through that type of development. We've had incidents where we can't get around a cul-de-sac because everybody's parked in the cul-de-sac. And I think that's one thing that's going to have to be addressed.
I do think a lot of those, the Deer Run units are single-car garages with narrow or shorter driveways. We are proposing to have, again, 2-car garages and 4 outdoor parking spaces, which is well above the town code requirement to have 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit.
Now, in the town's PDD legislation, one of the big considerations as far as the town considering a PDD is the town receives some kind of benefit. What benefit do we receive?
So the benefit, one is certainly preservation of open space that will be forever protected. 55 acres is more than half of the property. When we look at other benefits, we look for, in comparison to a conventional layout, servicing a similar number of homes. We have significantly less road. We have significantly less impervious area. We have significantly less utility infrastructure in the way of water and sewer. Essentially, we're significantly reducing the impacts of this property on an overall scale in compared to a conventional layout to essentially a cluster layout.
When you say reducing water and sewer, that's the amount of pipe you put in the ground, but you're increasing the capacity by the buildings because you're adding more buildings.
So again, when we look at a cluster or a conventional layout, we're looking somewhere in the range to 80 to 120 units. We're proposing 100, which is right there and about the middle. So we are actually not increasing the demand on the sewer and water. We're remaining the same. We're just taking all of those units and clustering them down to a smaller area. Certainly within the, I think it's the R2 open space incentive zoning of the town. This is the exact type of development that they're looking to promote within those areas of the town, and as well as certain significant amount of the adjacent communities, clustering and conservation subdivisions are almost becoming the standard, and they're definitely the preferred methodology for preserving land and open space.
And probably my last question is, how do we handle, I assume you're going to have an HOA,
There will be an HOA.
because with the new post office regulations, there has to be an area for clustered mailboxes.
Yep.
So that has to be taken care of by an HOA.
Yeah.
And the other thing I see where they don't have an HOA in these types of buildings, when you get to maintenance issues, roofs and things like that, one side will replace the roof with a different color, and the next side, it starts to look like a circus tent does. So I think having an HOA is a very good thing.
Yeah, certainly this, there will be an HOA. So I'd say also, this is not going to be a age-restricted community. However, this type of design for these units with the garages, first floor master bedrooms, is very much geared and marketed towards the empty nester and senior community. It's your smaller footprint of your single-family houses.
Do you know the square footage of these units you're looking at?
We don't have an exact square footage. We know we're looking at 2-car garages and first floor masters. You're probably looking in the range of 14 to 2,000 square
Are they
feet.
going to be 1-story, 2-story?
They'll probably likely be 2-story. There might be a mix of 1 and 2 stories. Again, we don't want to build 92 identical units. We certainly want to give the community character. Some attached dwellings, single attached to a 2-story. Again, give some undulation, step backs, different types of porches, elevations is something that we are looking to do.
And one last question, do you know the length of the actual road area? Roughly. You know, I'm not going to hold you to it tonight.
Yeah, I can certainly provide that. It's, probably 3,000-ish, 3,600 linear feet of road.
Okay. Because every time we add one of these developments, we certainly should be talking with highway, because they're pretty much at their limit for maintaining roads. So this would mean, when we look at it from a town aspect, doesn't mean we're going to have to add another employee,
another truck.
equipment, things like that.
So, and again, if this was a conventional layout, there would be more road
It
to
would be
maintain.
more. Yeah, that's correct.
And it would be something that would be offered for dedication to the town, as there is the right to be able to build and dedicate those roads, as long as they're built within the appropriate standard. So again, I think we're looking at a community that is almost identical to the larger community. We're just shrinking the footprint down to have less potential environmental impacts.
As far as sewer and water, you said you're going to hook up to Rollins Hollow Water
Yes,
coming from the north.
correct.
How far down is that covering just your project?
Right now, the Rollins Hollow water main was extended and tied into the Heritage Springs water main with a meter pit south of the project. So the water infrastructure is already in Stone Church Road. I believe that was part of the Hutchins Road PDD that was approved. That was a
It's
requirement.
right at Akron Boulevard, basically, right? That's where I think it came out.
Yeah, this is where the water came from. It ran down and it tied into, I can't think of the new subdivision going in down there right now. It's,
Fair Oaks.
Fair Oaks.
Yes.
That's about the location of the meter pit. Speaking of Fair Oaks, that is where the sewer is, and sewer would be extended likely from the north. There's a couple different alternatives, but we'll probably be bringing sewer up the road. Again, some additional studies need to be done with the sewer, with the water. We've had conversations with both utility providers. It appears that there is sufficient capacity available. Obviously, we got a lot more work to do.
It's a little bigger than I would like to see, but I think you can work those out with the planning board, especially, like I said, the northwest corner there. We've had some issues with the cul-de-sacs that have gone in already, with turning and plowing and those kind of issues. So I'm sure Dave and Jason will have some input as to the size and the diameter of those things, so that it works for them. To be honest with you, that's what we're more worried about.
Again, we're willing to work with everybody. The Caesar brothers and their family has owned this property a lot longer than I've been alive, probably a lot longer than most of the people on this board. And
I'm thinking Frank might.
They are not developers. They're at a point, they're looking to move on, maybe preserve one of these estate lots for the family, so that they can still come up here and enjoy their time in the summer up in Saratoga County, but also looking to sell off the land and get a builder on board. There are certainly some builders that have expressed interest, and certainly this type of a housing unit is very desirable in the demographics that we're seeing in Saratoga County, developing and continuing to grow.
And what about traffic mitigation? If you're going to add units like that, certainly the intersection of Stone Church and Geyser is going to have to be looked at. And maybe some work, some mitigation is going to have to be done there too.
So certainly we're expecting to do a traffic study. We're trying to get a little further into the process, understand where this project's actually going before we start investing the time and effort into that study. But we are aware that a traffic study of the area will be required for a project of this density.
I don't have anything else. John?
I know.
Brian?
Yes, I do. Just a quick question. So I heard nature trails and a dog park were referenced. Are those going to be accessible to anyone or only those that reside in that development?
Currently, they are proposed to be private for the members of this community.
Can you control that? Can you control that?
Certainly for access to the dog park, there could be a certain type of key fob that each of the owners would possess to gain access to those gates. Trail itself, it'd be hard to police. Is there a desire of the town to have open space and trails within this area? That is also something that we could consider and the planning board could discuss if that is, that is an appropriate route to go.
I'm sure Mr. Bartow will bring that up in his considerations for this project too.
Have you ever considered a bike path down Stone Church Road?
No, I haven't. Again, if this is something that town's interested in, we're kind of all ears, and does need to be some public benefits. I think I described many of the benefits of this project. I think that's getting mixed reviews. The bike path, it is a narrower right-of-way. It may be hard to extend it beyond our property. But certainly increasing the available right-of-way in front of our property could certainly be discussed.
Anyone else? So we just recommend this project go to the planning board?
Motion to send it to the planning board for their review and recommendations.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to send this project to the planning board for their review and recommendations.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalati.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you.
I'm going to give Joe a minute or two to pack up, and then apparently I skipped over our first public comment session, so after he gets packed up, we'll go back to that.
Thought I got up here really quick. This,
We should have put it over.
I can leave a smaller version of it.
Joe, is he in this?
It is in that.
Okay.
This is online.
All right, take it.
There's a copy here I can leave.
Oh, no.
I'll provide it to the town if the town wants to provide it to you. They certainly can. I can't.
For tonight, you can, yeah. And then you can foil for anything that you'd like to say. Actually, while he's packing up, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the special meeting on March 2nd and the minutes from the March 11th meeting. That was a regular meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Can you poll the board, please?
Sure. Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isakson.
Yes.
Supervisors Lott.
Yes. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, have a great night.
Okay, at this time, we will go back to our first public comment session. Yes, sir.
Can we see this just a second? Hello, Michael Landis, 272 Meadowlark Drive. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right, look. Perfect. Imagine if you put a massive metallic waste processing plant right up. John, you might not like this, but you have to, it's a reality, buddy. Right here. This horseshoe design, this is not dissimilar from the 3 communities that border Planet. Right, what was there before when those communities were built was a dormant, quote dormant, that's Tony Dawson called it, himself called it dormant. And then he opened up a totally different business there with industrial cranes that do all kinds of sounds and shake everything. Imagine this property with that in the middle of it. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Now look, in the last meeting, I'm sorry, I get worked up about this. In the last meeting, Supervisor Zlotnick made it clear that the board could respond to questions and comments. I was surprised to hear that, but you did actually respond and you set the precedent. And for the last several months, you have heard me, my neighbors, other resident people I don't even know, telling you about what we live with and asking you. I've cited zoning violations. Nothing from you guys. You have people in tears telling you what it's like to live next to this metallic waste processing plant. Nothing. We've asked you questions about what you're going to do about this. When are we going to have a public hearing? And it's just been silence all along. I'm asking you, why are you giving us silence when you clearly can respond? So that's it. I'm keeping it short tonight. But look, we expect something from you guys. Okay?
I would like to say something. I think Councilman Isaacson has a statement to make about this, Mr. Landis. This sounds like a good time. Benny?
Yep, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so I had planned to make a comment later in the meeting when we started to talk about new and old business. But to provide an update, so there has been quite a few concerns escalated at the town board meetings. There have been emails that have been sent. There have been phone calls. I have visited some of these residences over the last months, all regarding concerns and comments pertaining to junk and junk dealers when it comes to the zoning. So to give a brief update, Councilwoman Kerr and myself have been working with our town attorney Craig, regarding potential changes to the zoning code. So there's been a back and forth where the 3 of us have been looking at potential changes, making slight changes or edits, and getting it to a point where we're prepared to deliver it to the full town board. So the latest updates, we've been going back and forth actually today, this afternoon. So we're hopeful at this point to have an update and provide these potential changes or edits to the code to the full board by next week. After the board has an opportunity to review, it will become an agenda item. If we want to proceed with making any changes to the code, the appropriate meetings will be held, so there's the opportunity for public input. Anyone else that would be interested, obviously, any business in the town that may be impacted by these changes as well. We'd also be looking to get a copy of any potential changes after the board reviews to these businesses so they have an opportunity to review.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else? Nope. Looking for hands from the folks that are watching. I don't see any, so we will close the first public comment session for tonight. Next up is Resolution 24 to set a standard workday for David Bramer and Lisa Wanis as per the New York State retirement system. Resolution 24 of 2021, resolution to set and establish reporting of a list of certain employees' titles and number of hours in the standard workday for each title for certain elected and appointed officials who are members of the New York State and local retirement system as required by law. Whereas pursuant to regulations that took effect August 12, 2009, the town must establish standard workdays for elected and appointed officials by adopting a resolution that lists certain employees' title and the number of hours in the standard workday for each title. And now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Milton, in regular session duly convened, does hereby establish the following as the standard workday. Workday for the attached listed elected and appointed officials, and will report the following day's work to the New York State and local employee retirement system based on the record of activities maintained and submitted by these officials to the clerk of the board. So we'll need a motion to approve resolution 24. This will set the standard workday for David and Lisa.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Was that John or Doug?
I think John Bard made the motion, I think Frank seconded, right?
Do we know what the standard workday is for?
Yes. I have that. And Dave's supposed to be filling out the form for the state, and then it gets put on the board for 30 days, and then it goes to the state.
We get to review both their numbers before that gets sent in.
Well, once we establish it, doesn't that, I guess, do we get any say-so in the numbers anyways? Sorry. I don't know, I was just curious.
The state sends a list and says, I don't know, Lisa's got like 8, and I don't know what Dave's is off the top of my head.
I think Dave's is at least a 6.5-hour day. It may be more, but it's at least a 6.5-hour day. And Lisa, because she's seasonal or provisional, whatever it is, it's pretty much whatever she works is what her hours are.
Okay.
We'll have those reports. They have to keep them for a certain period of time, and then we get to review them to set those hours. Can you pull the board, please?
Sure. Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalatnik.
Yes, thank you. Need a motion to approve 1 week of vacation buyout and 1 week of vacation rollover for Russell and Whitney from the Highway Department.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thanks, Frank. Any discussion? Brendan, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalatnik.
Yes. Under correspondence, I have a letter here addressed to the board. My name is Glenn Mitchell. I'm writing the board to ask permission to play a charity softball game on Saturday, April 24th, between the hours of 10 and 12 on the back softball field. Donations from this event will help enhance the Saratoga PBA field that they also use when they have their league. They will be following the COVID-19 regulations. There are currently not any guidance for adult sport leagues. However, organizations and administrators can reference the considerations for youth sport, find strategies for reducing exposure during sports competitions. They will each be bringing their own equipment, hats, gloves, headgear, helmets, water bottles. The only equipment that's possibly going to be shared would be the ball that's being used. Obviously, when you're out in the field, you're more than 6 feet apart, sitting on the bench. They will do their best to stay 6 feet apart. The umpires will also be enforcing that rule. They're allowed to have 2 teams. So there'll be very few spectators, maybe 1 per person, so you might have 15 to 20 people actually watching the game. With that, yours sincerely, Glenn Mitchell. I'd like to entertain a motion to allow them to use the field for that day, free of charge, as this is a fundraiser. It'll be for about 2 or 2.5 hours, and they'll be done.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Frank.
That sounds safe to me.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion? Seeing none, Brenda, can you pull the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes,
Councilman Frolich.
Yes,
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalapnik.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to our monthly reports. Building Department.
Okay, buildings and grounds, during the month of March, they have completed the following tasks. Beginning the process of cleaning and preparing playgrounds to be reopened. I think that's still up for discussion, but potentially that could be happening in the very near future. Cleaning and disinfecting of the properties daily. Perform maintenance and storage of snow removal equipment. Beginning the rehab of Ferguson Park bathrooms. There was quite a bit going on in those restrooms. They provided some detailed pictures to outline what's going on. Some of them include replacing the toilets, urinals, painting, high efficiency lighting. They have also started work on Pavilion 1. And they've also been helping move some of the equipment out of Town Hall to help prepare for Town Hall repairs and renovation.
Thank you, Ryan. Now we'll go back to the Building Department.
Building Department monthly report for February.
They can't hear you.
Building Department monthly report for February. In the month of February, the Building Department processed 16 building permits and collected $3,618.85 in building permit fees. We completed 73 construction inspections and responded to 9 code enforcement complaints. A total of 68 dog license renewal notices were handled by Mr. Nolan in February, excuse me, for the 3-month period between January and March. Total of 21 fire inspections were completed in February. Total of 14 permits were closed with 6 COs and 8 certificates of compliance being issued. There was also $600 collected in zoning board fees. Please see attached report. ZBA fee $600, building permits $3,618.85. Total fees collected $4,218.85.
Thank you. Historian, Karen, do you have anything for us? Well, she's watching, so I'm going to ask her. Oh, she did.
Yes, I do.
Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
You can read it.
Okay. Okay. Historian's report for March 24th, 2021. I continue to work from home, answering research requests and documenting the COVID-19 pandemic. I document daily numbers from the New York State, Town of Milton, Boston Spa, Saratoga County, and global numbers as well. As of 3/19, these are the current numbers. In the Town of Milton, we have 836 active total cases, 56 active cases, 772 recovered, and 8 deaths. In the village of Boston Spa, there were 257 cases, 7 active cases, 250 recoveries, and no deaths. She also has a total of 9 binders of collected newspaper and magazine articles, which she adds to daily. I add daily to an electronic diary that is like a timeline, which also helps document this event. The Historic Structures and Places Committee met on February 22nd via Zoom. I have started to do the documentation research for the Pomeroy Historic Road Marker that we plan to apply for, highlighting the importance of the Caterossaurus Creek. Our committee has decided to create a video that coincides with Brookside's Forgotten Crossroads program that they are starting. We will be highlighting Rock City Falls and have set aside a separate meeting to work on ideas of what to present and to review pictures of the Rock City Falls community. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is planned for April 7th, and we will include reviewing our historic guidelines. The Saratoga County Historical Center, Brookside, continues to post virtual programs to their website and to YouTube. Please check them out. You might learn something you didn't know about our area. An upcoming exhibit they are working on is about local country stores. She is still looking for pictures of Ma Young's store in West Milton. She did locate pictures of both Keir's store and Tenney's store. If you know of anybody who could help with that, please have them contact me as soon as possible. Respectfully submitted, sorry Karen, Karen Stalters, Town Historian. Town Clerk.
So for February 2021, we had 2 marriages, 7 certified marriage certificates, 66 certified death certificates, 8 FOIL and search of records requests, 127 dog licensing, 3 hunting and fishing licenses, and we brought in $2,935.63.
Thank you. Town justice, Frank?
Justice, I don't have. David, said justice?
Yeah, the court didn't give you a report?
Court, I'm sorry. This is the Milton Town Court, the charge volume summary for all judges for,
Frank, right into the microphone, please.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, is it getting it?
Yep.
Okay. Town Milton Court charge volume for summary of all judges for September 2021. 18 charges were received, 73 charges were disposed. Total money collected from and remitted to the state comptroller. And this was added up to $5,100.00. That's it.
Thank you, Frank. Moving on to our liaison reports. John, do you have anything from planning and zoning?
Yeah, a couple of things. Zoning was pretty light. They had just one area variance application that's moving along for Loya. Planning board had 2 applications that came before them. The first was an active solar on Route 29, Rock City Falls, and was just the start of it. The second was a, hang on. I apologize. The second was Cateros Village. I apologize, I had a momentary lapse. Down here, who's come back to site plan actually, because they have split up some of their buildings, and they're in their, I think this is their final phase, and it will increase the numbers, so they have to go back through the planning board for that. So that's where they're at. That's just the start of that.
Okay. Thank you, John. Ryan, anything from buildings and grounds, or did you read that earlier?
I covered it all.
Okay, thanks. Councilwoman Kerr, highway and building.
Highway, March report. Oh, sorry. We will be finishing up tree trimming in all subdivisions this week. If any residents are in need of a mailbox repair, please call the office, 885-5655, or email highway@townofmiltonny.org to be placed on a repair list. Brush and weed pickup will begin next week. Please leave any yard debris at curbside for pickup. Street sweeping will begin the first week of April. Compost will be delivered to 503 Geyser Road mid to late April for residents to pick up Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And the transfer station is open Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and will open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. starting in May.
Thank you. This is a report from the receiver of taxes, March 24th, Supervisor Slotnick and town board members. Taxes collected from March 1st through March 24th, 2021 total $194,980.87, plus $3,205.33 in penalties and second notice fees. Total amount of taxes paid to date is $7,553,069.24. As of March 24th, 91% of our taxes have been collected. On March 9th, 2021, a check was given to Supervisor Slotnick in the amount of $536.86 which represented payment to the town for bank account interest received for January and February, along with penalties paid in February. Respectfully submitted, Lisa Wanis, receiver of taxes. Under new business, I have a letter here from the Saratoga County Veterans Agency. Last month, actually back in the end of January, beginning of February, the city of Saratoga supervisor came to the Veterans Committee and asked us for some funding for flags that they like to give out, that they do give out for Veterans Day or Memorial Day. The city, as we all know, has had a pretty rough time with sales tax reductions, and the board decided, the county board supervisor decided that we would fund that project. So what the county has decided to do is that every town will receive $2,500 to assist Saratoga County communities with the funding of veteran programs, events, or projects. Examples of the intended use include, but are not limited to, expenses related to parades, ceremonies, or other recognition events for veterans and military. Reimbursement applications will be approved by the Saratoga County Veterans Committee, and reimbursements will be made directly to the town or city. In order for reimbursement, for your completed project, and then there's a list of things that they need to see. So I'm going to send this letter off tomorrow to the VFW and the American Legion to let them know that there is funding available for projects, and I think that those two groups would have the best idea of where to spend that money, and I will wait to hear back from them on that. I have an update on Town Hall from MJ. Significant progress has been made at Town Hall over the past 2 weeks. Below is a brief summary of the progress so far. Contractor was mobilized on Monday, 3/15. March 15th, not at 3/15. Mold contaminated materials were removed from the building as indicated in the project documents, including second floor ceilings, insulation, and areas of the highway department. The contractor was authorized to remove ceiling tiles from the basement level, highway department, and the court area. As of yesterday, mold remediation work is complete, and all ceiling tiles and insulation have been removed from the building. The main building roofing system has been removed, and the plywood deck completely replaced. The roof is currently weather-tight with a temporary vapor barrier. The majority of the court roof has also been removed. Only a small area of existing metal decking needed to be replaced. The roof is weather-tight with temporary vapor barrier. The building soffit demolition has begun. The soffits were in very bad condition. The soffits are being rebuilt and will be faced with metal panels instead of the EIFS at the direction of the town. Moving forward, the contractor will continue to prep the main building and court area to receive new roofing materials. Weather and temperature will dictate when the EPDM system can be applied, but she expects that will begin in the next couple of weeks. The contractor remains on schedule. With the additional mold remediation, we have used about 75% of the allowance thus far. They are keeping a close eye on things and will alert us if we feel any change orders will be necessary above and beyond the allowance amounts, which that will require town board approval. We are almost complete with the demolition, so we expect that a majority of the unknown conditions have been identified. Jenny Lippman, MJ Design. I had a couple people call the last few days because the new fence is going up around the airport. And the height of the fence isn't the problem that they were asking about. The problem was the razor wire at the top of the fence that looks rather like a prison yard instead of a fence. But I've spoken to County DPW today, and the reason for the wire at the top of the fence is to keep wildlife from jumping over the fence and getting into the property. I asked if it had to be up there, and it was an FAA requirement. I'm going to get confirmation of that in the next few days from DPW supervisor. Since the federal government was paying for over 90% of this project, they pretty much had to say in what they could put on, how the fence was going to be constructed. Also, the Federal Relief Act came through. The town is scheduled to get $2.1 million over the next year and a half to 2 years. Villages are not scheduled under this Relief Act to get any funds, so we have been ordered, directed to give some of that money to the village. That is going to be done on a population basis. So as most of you know, the village is in, majority of the village is in the town of Milton, and a small portion of it is in the town of Ballston. Dave Bramer, our controller, has given it a quick look, and it appears that we are going to have to give them 22% of our money. It looks like 22% of our residents actually live in the village, so that comes to about $210,000 or $15,000 per payment. So out of the 2.1, the village will get roughly $400,000, and we will roughly get $1.7 million to spend over the next year and a half to 2 years. There are some requirements or restrictions on how that money can be spent. When we get a little further information from the county and the state, we will sit down and talk about that as a board and see where we think this money should be going for projects that we can use around town. I think that's about it for what I have. I'm sorry, yes. As we know, the insurance, NYMER denied our payment from the water damage from the leak. We received a letter, an email today from a resident who has done some extensive research on this, and he thinks that the town has a leg to stand on, and Jim has looked at it, and we've passed that information on to NYMER. Dave Meager, I had asked Dave Meager to look into it further before we got this, but now maybe with this extra information, hopefully we'll get some of that funding back. Anybody else?
Yeah, just a couple of things on town hall. I walked through it the other day and took a look at the demo, which has gone nicely. I have some concerns. I actually sat down and wrote up a list of rebuild stuff for each office, ceilings, floors, things like that. And we really need to have some kind of plan for that, because we can't wait until the last minute and try and force it. What made me a little nervous, Benny, when I looked at it, I think we might be beyond the capabilities of our facilities people as far as doing work. If it had been just a matter of doing like ceiling tiles, I probably would have said yes. But when I see they got to go back and install grids and ceilings and things like that now, which is quite a bit more extensive, I think we should be looking at getting this next section of this contract together so we can get it out to bid and actually have a company.
Well, I've had a couple conversations with Anthony, and he is looking over the recommendations that we had from the review.
Yeah.
And he's going to sit down with his guys, and they're going to come up with a list of what they think they can handle and what they can't. And when he gives me that, then I'll pass that on to the board, and we'll move on with the next step.
When I looked at the mechanical evaluations, there are some things I think need to be done immediately, especially in the electrical end of it. There was one electrical ground connection, which is on the main service coming in, that's quite corroded, and that should be addressed immediately, because probably that ground isn't functioning anymore. And that's really a safety issue, and that's something that should be addressed.
I'll call Joel tomorrow and see where we stand on those things.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? All right. I do have someone, so we'll move on to our second public comment of the night, and I do see a hand up, so I'm going to ask this person to speak. Ms. Whipple, you need to unmute yourself, please. There you go.
I just wanted to just back up what Mr. Lynn has said, and also I just want to thank you for, your actions and that statement, and I'll leave it at that for now, and we'll just see what comes down the road. But thank you, and I appreciate you looking into it. It means a lot to me.
Okay, we need your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Susan Whipple in 278 Meadowlark Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dawson, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Tony Dawson, Planet Waste Recycling. 274 Greenfield Avenue, Boston, New York. First, I'd like to respond to Mr. Landis's earlier comments, as well as Mr. Phillips. Mr. Landis's comments certainly reinforces my position, as his development was approved only on an acknowledgement that there was in fact a junkyard or a metallic recycling facility operating on the southern property line of their development. Town Law Chapter 103 was acknowledged and upheld in 1992 when they approved the Milton Oaks subdivision approval, and then again it was upheld by New York State Supreme Court Justice Judge Ferradino on an Article 78 proceeding that he decided in favor using Chapter 103. Now to the board, as far as the idea of entertaining some zoning codes, I would say that the Town Law 103 was recently acknowledged and used in decisions. And I personally do not feel that you can set the bar higher because we've achieved it by changing the current laws. I would strongly encourage you that if you want to do something, the first logical step would be to meet with the stakeholders to discuss what you have in mind. And if my direction is not, considered, I would encourage you to proceed with caution because this exercise will come at a huge cost to taxpayers. Now moving on, I'll address the FOIL response request that I received. My first point would be my
1 minute, sir.
There's been repeated allegations that my company did not go through the proper licensing process. That it is not licensed properly. That is simply actually incorrect, and the record is clearly abundantly clear, reinforcing this. Mr. Landis, I see, submitted a document entitled New York Division of Local Government Controlling Junk with the quote. Page 4 of that document clearly states that it's only applicable to municipalities that have not enacted its own law. The town of Milton has, therefore it's not applicable. The renewal process is clearly defined in Chapter 103 and cannot be arbitrarily changed by holding a hearing or revoking, and town supervisor cannot instruct the town building inspector to not renew my license if I'm in compliance. Doing that, in effect, would be the municipality forfeiting its right to regulate us by withholding a license if we are in compliance.
30 seconds, sir.
Another noise ordinance. Noise ordinance allows 55 to 62 decibels. A typical gas-operated lawnmower or snow blower creates 90 to 100 decibels. That would basically leave every property owner in violation, and it's not enforceable. And it has also been stated that being near a pre-existing prior non-conforming use, a noise ordinance would not apply to us as a junkyard operating under Town Law 101.
Okay, your time is up, sir. Thank you.
I just want to respond quickly to that. We have every intention of including the junkyard owners to what we were doing, but we have to present it to the board first for their input. But it was definitely on our agenda that it would go out to everyone, including the residents.
Thank you. Mr. Kane.
Yes, good evening, board members. My name is Mike Kane, and I live on Meadowlark Drive. I'm frustrated at the lack of acknowledgement of my recent complaint that I officially filed 22 days ago about excessive noise coming from the Planet Waste to the town building inspector. Not only was my complaint not addressed, I apparently was issued a citation from the building inspector, courtesy of Planet Waste, that was delivered to the wrong address and then returned to the town hall by that homeowner. I have never seen it. I am curious as to what I was cited for, as my fence is intact the entire length of my property, and I have plenty of trees. On another note, I just want to remind you that I voted for this current board on the promises of change and on the premise of being for the residents of Milton. And in conclusion, as homeowners yourselves, let me ask you this question. I know you're not going to answer, but if I could ask you, how would you feel if your hometown continued dropping in the urban housing market? If you're in retirement and you were being forced to contemplate moving away or living with a massive scrapyard facility in your backyard, a facility that has no business being right in the middle of multiple family neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment. I don't think there's a need for executive session tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Frank. Brenda, can you poll the board, please?
Councilman Blaisdell.
Yes.
Councilwoman Kerr.
Yes.
Councilman Froelich.
Yes.
Councilman Isaacson.
Yes.
Supervisor Zalotnik.
Yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Good night, and may your God bless you.
And it's to help that development keep some type of semblance of what they were originally approved as.
Okay.
But the town wouldn't normally go in and enforce those because they are a private right of action versus our code, which is responsibility of the town to enforce.
Okay.
They could have very easily had right in the code that PDD is approved and the town has the right or the obligation to enforce those. When I'm, as attorney for the town, if those PDDs come for me, I usually want to see language that says the town has the right but not the obligation to enforce them. Because there's some deed restrictions that are so beneficial to the general public health, we want to be able to enforce them. But again, like I said, I don't want the town to have to enforce every homeowners association rule and regulation, every clothesline, every basketball hoop that's in violation. We just don't want to go out and do all that. That's why it's set for a particular neighborhood. Usually it's the developer that comes up with the restrictions.
Okay.
In this case, I think the town, again, I wasn't here then,
Right.
but I think the town probably said, hey, listen, there's a junkyard there, so you should probably have a fence and a buffer. And there was a reason for that.
Right.
But it got placed into deed restrictions, not into the town code.
Okay,
So
so,
in essence, it's never enforceable.
It's enforceable
Well, it
by
is
any homeowner
enforceable
that wants to sue their
If
neighbor for
Mr.
a violation.
Dawson took all the
Absolutely.
homeowners.
That's up to you.
right, well, that's what I was.
It's not in the deed, we're taking Dawson's word.
It isn't.
I have a real estate practice, this is none of this, this is all
It's
made
not in
up.
all deeds, it's only for certain
It's
developments.
declaration
And
now.
it might not be in your specific deed because it just references all restrictions of record.
Right, right.
You have to go back to prior deeds.
Back to 1989, which no one,
To that time.
that only exists in
The original purchasers had.
Thank you, Jim, I just wanted to get, I wanted to figure it out.
From person to person?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, it does, but what he's probably saying, I don't know your neighborhood versus the other ones, but what he's saying is a typical attorney that's drawing up a new deed would say, here's your legal description, and it's subject to whatever deed restrictions are.
That's what I said.
That means you have to look back
Right.
to see. And most people, rightfully so, don't, right? You just look at it and say, oh,
But
whatever.
has anyone actually gone to the actual books and
Yeah.
look, are we just, and it doesn't say that?
Yeah, you've got 75 foot, you're not supposed to cut trees, you're supposed to maintain the fence.
White trees?
Absolutely.
Not
Yeah,
covered.
again, it's not every neighborhood, but there is a neighborhood that has those restrictions right in the deed type thing.
And if people cut those trees, then they are basically and they're I don't know who's complaining and where the trees are. But if somebody's complaining that they can hear the junkyard and they cut down all the trees, they're the ones that are in violation,
Certainly
not
contribute
Dawson.
to it, yeah.
Right. That's,
But unfortunately,
that's just
it's not
common
something that
sense.
the town enforces.
Oh, right,
It would
but,
be Mr. Dawson taking these people to court. Nobody wants that to happen.
which in actuality, he probably could then, if that's the way you're explaining it, John.
Huh?
If that's the way that you're explaining it, then he could take all these residents to court because you can't, the town can't enforce that.
Correct.
Wow.
And
This is
so I
gonna be a
don't want to
mess.
get into the legal parts of that, but point in fact is, it's a gray area if Dawson has the right to enforce against a neighborhood. He doesn't have that restriction on his land, the neighborhood does.
Right.
So he's not a party to that restriction. He is an abutting landowner, so there may be some avenue. I haven't done the case law look on that. What about Lonnie?
I guess it just seems like if this is going to be a real big, drawn, long process.
What's we want from 2018? I'm new to this. This has been going on for 2018 with fight.
Well, I've been coming for 17 and a half years, and this is the first time I've heard about it is this
They'll tell you
last
that's
year.
not true.
No, that, when we,
This past year and a half, since the end of 2018 is when.
I was gonna say,
all of
this started a
started.
couple years ago. Yeah.
I'm thinking we're in 20, Barb.
Yeah, it started.
When we had all the petitions and everything.
2018.
You know what it reminds me of, Luther Fort, or Laurel Acres. The people bought all those things and then they complained that it smelled like cow manure. Well, duh, they just bought a house near a god farm.
Right in the
They
center.
thought,
Right?
People
Or
that-
anybody that, you know,
People that
on
bought
the
Luther's Fort and then
racetrack.
complained
use
of the
all
racetrack.
common sense for God's sake.
Well, I think what you have to look at, you really need to bring all the parties together.
Now, can a resident, I guess because I want to know, can a resident
I
that's
don't know
not.
what meeting on it or we'll just be sending it out. I guess for the neighbors would have
I want a house on a tree.
We're pushing for, my group is pushing for a public hearing of some kind. We want a public event.
Okay.
We're trying to bring this out into the open. It's Dawson works through, you know, threats and angry letters and whatnot. You know, we're here every week, you know, with Susan Whipple and Mike Katie, and you know, we represent a group of almost 50 people.
Well, yeah, we had those petitions a few years ago too, so.
Like I said, I've been paying attention to this whole thing, and I just wanted to know if you're looking at doing something within our zoning.
We're doing
Well-
an ordinance change, if I'm correct.
Well, what it will affect, Shannon, it will affect any junkyard in town.
We're not just picking on him, it's any junkyard.
Yeah.
And does that go, I mean, like, today you're gonna approve something and tomorrow it starts? Or is this
No,
something
you have
at
obviously
the end
give
of the
people
year?
time to, you know, comply.
But then it's gonna be quite honest with you, if we make a zoning change and it's kind of like our sewer thing,
Mhm.
then it's gonna have to go through the court system.
That's what I thought.
Because businessmen, unfortunately, we're gonna look at it. And it could be the other way. If we make a decision the other way, that could end up in the court system. And this group could come in and sue us also.
People,
I mean, I remember when.
I guess at the end of the day, what you'd like to do is sit everybody down and
Say,
come up
let's
with
come to some compromise.
Yes.
a resolution that not everybody's happy with.
Obviously,
But
not
they're
everybody's
equally
going to be
unhappy.
happy, but at least, yeah.
Like, I remember when.
And I think we
Obama
tried that.
Had his little,
Yes.
and we put an Article 7 against the town and it won.
but apparently a deal was made and Dawson never lived up to his end of the deal.
Well, there was some other issues with
Dude, I bought right in like February of 29, so I came right in after that happened. And that was happening,
So we had that public hearing right in this
so.
room.
That's right.
that. We had the public hearing, and unfortunately, when they looked at the attendance, it was pretty poor.
Terrible.
But you still have to bring people in and let them voice their concerns on both sides. We want to hear both
Well,
sides.
I think some of the address the fact that his business is evolving, right? It's not a static business, so it's worse, it gets worse as the months go on. This is something that a lot of people don't understand. Like, it's getting noisier, the trash in mountains are getting bigger, the cranes are increasing, right? This is not a static thing. That's something we have to address. It's not Loya's quiet junkyard. Ryan will tell you, Ryan came to our house.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thanks, Kelly. I'll say, off the record, I'd love to stop having to do this every 2 weeks. I was actually gonna like apologize, like, this is a waste of town time. Like, it's ridiculous. There's so many other things that we should be talking about. So I just wanted to let you guys know, no one wants to put this to bed more than me, whatever. Trust me.
Now you have one person.
What's that?
You have one person who wants to put it to bed.
Probably 3 or 4. Jason, can you
We
lock
should
that
solve
door
your
in the kitchen
problem.
on your way out? out, my TV is not working.
We all
15
work
minutes the
together,
other night,
so,
the
yep.
Wi-Fi worked.
And, you know, Dawson's kind of angry stuff is really driving people crazy.
Thanks,
It
Jason.
is on record.
But,
It is, it's being taped, it's on
oh,
record.
I haven't said anything that isn't, I haven't said.
No, you said it's off record.
Oh.
Yeah.